Okay, I want to talk to you guys about ballistic coefficient validation. For a lot of you, you might be surprised to know that you don't need a chronometer to find out your ballistic coefficient of your pellet. Typically you would shoot and chronograph the muzzle and then chronograph at 25 yards and you'd get a ballistic coefficient, right? Well, that's true, you can do that, but what happens if you don't have a chronometer but you know where your shots are impacting? Can you get a ballistic coefficient from just that? Yes, you can. I'll show you how to do it. For example, on this chart here, I've got a ballistic coefficient of 13. This is just a sample now. This isn't something I did. This is just kind of giving you an example of what could happen. So, for example, up in here we got a ballistic coefficient of 0.013. And our impact, let's say at 25 yards, let's grab that impact at 25 yards there. At 25 yards, this is the group now. This isn't just a single shot. These are your 5 to 10 pellets. They're all impacting 2 inches low at 25 yards. If we are sighted in for the 10 yard range, if you look there, anywhere between 7 to about 12 yards you're sighted in. You're zeroed out in that range. So let's say you do this, and let's say that you think it's 0.013, but let's say the pellets are not impacting 2 inches, but the cluster is impacting at 1 3/4 inches. Well, there's a cool little trick you can do. When you're out in the field at 25 yards, and let's say if the pellets did impact minus 1 3/4, all you have to do to find out the real ballistic coefficient is start cranking up the ballistic coefficient to match where your group is hitting. So for example, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enter 20, and I'm going to see if that line will come up so that the impact is going to be minus 1 3/4 rather than 2. So on the computer here, I'm going to enter, and this is the way you just keep adjusting it by keep changing the ballistic coefficient in here in this box. You keep adjusting it until it matches your impacts. Okay, this is before. Remember now, we're 2 inches at 25 yards is where the pellets are impacting. Okay, minus 2. Okay, now watch what happens when I press enter, when I change it from 0.013 to 0.020. Watch this. Okay, enter. Okay, look what just happened. At 25 yards, the shots are impacting minus 1 3/4 inches. So this is correct now, because if my pellets, if I'm zeroed in at 10 yards and my pellets are hitting minus 1 3/4, if they're all going in that general area, then what I could confirm from that is that my new ballistic coefficient is 0.020, which would be more accurate. Now the thing about ballistic coefficients you have to understand is they're not perfect, because the samples are taken sometimes at different yardages, and also each rifle is different too for its ballistic coefficient because of other factors like twist, and there's just so many other variables that go into ballistic coefficient. That's why you have to validate your ballistic coefficient. You can't just go by a chart. Now Hawk scopes here on this software, this Hawk Chair Gun Pro that I have here, you do have pellets that are listed with the ballistic coefficients, but once again, yeah, it might come close, but once again you still have to validate that that's the right ballistic coefficient for your rifle, because all barrels are different. All rifling is different in barrels. The Daisy 880, for instance, doesn't have much of a rifled barrel, so you're not going to get as much twist. So the pellet might not have the ballistic coefficient of, say, a FX air gun or some high-end air gun that's got a good rifling and gives the pellet a good twist. So that's one thing to consider. So what I would do if I were you guys, if you're out in the field, the first thing you have to do is find out where your sight in is. Make sure you're perfectly sighted in. And then at about 25 yards, take a sample of where your pellets are impacting, like I would go 5 to 10 shots. Find out where they're impacting, write it down, then come back and adjust that ballistic coefficient right there until it matches right here. Now once again, if I go back to 13, it's going to drop me down to 2, so I'll show you that now once again. So 0.013, enter. Okay, here we are back again. The pellet's dropping 2 inches at 25 yards. So I'm going to show you what I did here. If they're dropping 1 3/4, simply what you do is, if you're going higher, that means the ballistic coefficient's getting better. So we're going to crank it up from 13 to 20. Now you can do this, if you want it really accurate, you can do it one little step at a time. You can go 0.14, 0.15, 0.16, and you can really fine tune it. But just for example, I'm going to hit 20 one more time, and I'm not going to hit the enter button until you guys see this here. Okay, so let's say that you're in the field at 25 yards once again. Your shots are impacting 2 inches low, or at least you thought they were, but they're actually impacting 1 3/4 inches low. Hit this button again. Okay, there you go. You got your correction. And once you get your correction, then you notice that there's other places where you can check your pellets, like at 20 yards. So you don't necessarily have to check your pellets at 25 yards. So this is one way. Two things with this. This is one way to find your ballistic coefficient without a chronometer. And the other thing is to mark down in your notebook what your ballistic coefficient is for a particular pellet for your rifle, rather than going by the given ballistic coefficients, which do help, but they're not always spot on, because these are different air rifles. See this right here? These are all different air rifles. I could take my air rifles and I could chrony all day long. The RWS Superpoint, for instance, I get about 20 with that one, with the Daisy 880. It says 0.010 here. That's a wad cutter's ballistic coefficient. I found that some of these aren't really that good. When you got 0.010, that's a wad cutter. That's not a pointed or a dome pellet. They're usually higher in ballistic coefficient. So these were quick samples that they took just to get you started. But you need to do your own validation in the field, because it's the field results or the indoor results. Like me, I shoot indoors at 15 yards, so I can make accurate predictions with no wind or anything like that at 15 yards. But you want the real field test so that you can validate that pellet for yourself, so that when you do your drop charts now, when you do your drop charts, like over here, you can see the drop, the point of impact drops here and stuff like that. When you do this, then that way you have a better understanding of your own air rifle and your own pellets that are going through your air rifle. So this is just another way to show you guys what you can do. And also this chair gun is actually an app, so you might want to download that on your Android phone. If you guys just have an iPhone or something, I would recommend for air guns, I would recommend getting another Android. I use Androids mostly, but these days it's always good to have a couple Android phones on you for different purposes. So go out and get another phone. It could be a cheap one, and install that Hawk Chair Gun Pro on your Android, or whatever ballistic software you want to put on your phone. but it's good to have one phone just for other things so that you can use your main phone for your calls and business or whatever you're doing. So, and phones are cheap nowadays. You can get a prepaid phone for Android, I think, for like 20 bucks nowadays. If you look carefully, you can get one for that. So the age of smartphones is very cheap now, and they do a lot of things for you. And for that low price, just go out and get an extra phone. That's what I recommend. And put a little card on it if it's a prepaid one, so it doesn't bug you about activation. And then after the card expires, the 30 days or however long, just let it expire. And then the phones tend not to bug you so much about activation, you know, as long as you put in one card or whatever to get it started. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is just one thing that's never been talked about online, about correcting your ballistic coefficient by analyzing the chart and then just using your ballistic coefficient up here. If you know what the velocity is, just subtract or add some ballistic coefficient so that you can find out exactly what the ballistic coefficient of the pellet is. So it's a way of fine-tuning your rifle for that particular pellet so that you know what your drop charts are going to be like and have more accurate data on the drop charts. Once again, it's all about field. So you always physically validate stuff. I mean, computers are fine. They're nice. They help out. They help you get within the range, but then the rest is up to you to figure out. And that's one of the reasons why there's validation, is because you're in the field and you can see the results and then make the corrections on the computer like I did here to match your field results, because the field results is more important than a computer. But anyway, hope you guys appreciate the video. So this is the first time that ballistic coefficient validation, I think, that I've seen online for air guns, and also first time that I've seen anybody talk about finding out what ballistic coefficient is without having a chronometer. So it's not necessary. If you know where the shots are impacting and you know where your sighting is, you can just kind of go by that and get your own ballistic coefficient without having to have the work of setting up a chronometer at point blank range and then setting it up at 25 yards like I did. So, but anyway, thanks for watching, guys.